School does not teach you shit, just stay with me. When given a quiz on taxes, nearly half of Americans failed, and when given a 5th grade reading test, the average score was a whopping 66% on average. People don't know anything about taxes or even basic reading knowledge, so what did they really learn? Well, they learned how to maintain a consistent schedule, turn in assignments on time, and follow deadlines, so they became great worker bees. But my viewers deserve better, so in this video, I'm going to teach you everything school failed to. Starting with our first category, money. When I was growing up, my mom always told me she wished there was more personal finance classes in school, and I agree. But I didn't tell her that still hasn't changed. But don't worry though, because in this category, I'm going to cover the 3 things you need to become a pro with money. Now, you can think of credit as an imaginary number that's tied to your forehead. Anytime you go to get a car loan or apply for a new house or even apply for government jobs, they're going to look at this number and completely judge you off of it. It determines your trustworthiness and ability to pay back loans. The lower the number, the less trustworthy, and the higher the number, the more trustworthy. But what does that really do for you? Well, the higher the number, the better interest rates you get. So when you apply for houses and cars, you have to pay less money back to the lender. But when the number's lower, you're going to get higher payments over shorter periods of time because they know they can't trust you. And now that you know credit is actually really important for your future, I'm going to show you what impacts it and can raise or lower your score. Starting with the first one, which is your payment history. And this just determines how often you paid the money back in full. If you didn't pay back even 1 month, that could be super detrimental to your credit because now banks and lenders know they can't trust you're always going to pay it back on time. So your payment history is super important when factoring in what your credit score should be because these people want to know that you're trustworthy. Now, the second main factor that affects credit score is your credit utilization. Now, that's just a fancy word to describe how much of your total credit limit are you using at any given time. Your credit limit is how much a card is going to let you spend, and your total credit limit is how much you could spend on all of your cards combined. At the max, you should be using around 30% of your total credit limit at any given time. Preferably, you'd want to be under 10%, and that'll be the best for your credit score. So length of credit history is calculated by taking the age of all of your different credit cards and averaging out to get one number. This number will shrink every time you open a new card because that one's going to be younger and it's going to lower your average age. But there's one more thing we should touch on before we finish up this section. There's 2 types of inquiries on your credit, a hard inquiry and a soft inquiry. A hard inquiry is an official pull of your credit by either a bank or a dealership so they can get the exact number and approve you for a specific loan. But a soft inquiry is what happens on like Credit Karma or when you're getting pre-approved for credit cards. The main difference between the two is that a hard inquiry will temporarily drop your credit score for the time being, and a soft inquiry is not going to impact it. This is important to know because if you apply to a credit card without getting pre-approved first, it's going to have a hard inquiry on your credit and lower it even if you get denied. And that's a quick crash course on credit. If you want to learn more, there's a bunch of different resources out there you can read on Investopedia. But first, there's something more important to cover if you want to become a pro with money, and trust me, all of my subscribers will get there. So if you're not subscribed, you should probably go do that right now. Okay, welcome back. Now let's talk about taxes. So a tax is what Uncle Sam is going to take out of your pocket anytime you make income. These go towards roads, schools, and bombs. In the US, we have what is known as a marginal tax bracket, and this just means the more you make, the more they're going to take. So if you make $200,000, your first $50,000, they might take 10% of that. But then $50,000 to $100,000 of your dollars, they're going to take 20% of it. And then $100,000 to $200,000, they're going to take 30%. So it's not like they're just going to take 30% of your $200,000. They're going to take it in increments depending on how much income you make. And I know that might be a little bit confusing, so I'm going to explain this with cookies. Imagine you have a stack of cookies and your parents say, the more cookies you get, the more I'm going to take. The first 5 cookies, they let you keep them all and they just leave you alone. But then the next 5 cookies you make, they take 1 and they're gonna eat it right in front of your face. So from cookies 0 to 5, they took none. From cookies 0 to 10, they took 1. And that's exactly how marginal taxes work. They only take more when you make more. I hope that explanation was sufficient because we're just gonna move on to how they determine how much taxes to take. A, how many people live in your household, how many dependents you have, and how much money you're making. The more you make, the more they take, but the more dependents you have, the less they take. And a dependent could be a parent that relies on you or a child or a spouse if they don't work. Dependents function as the government giving you a discount because you're raising the next taxpayers. Whenever you get a check, your employer automatically takes those out for you, so you don't have to worry about it. But what about when you get a tax return? When they take it out on your behalf, it's usually just a best guess. So sometimes they can over collect your money and then eventually it will be returned to you by the US government. So tax returns are not free money. It's just the government giving you back what you overpaid. You basically just gave them a loan without consent, completely for free. But this is where taxes can really get hard because if you're self-employed or a business owner, who's going to collect the taxes for you? Well, it falls on your behalf and you need to save about 25 to 30% of your income just to be safe. Because when tax season comes around, you can bet Uncle Sam's going to be ready with his hand out. But taxes on the money you make aren't the only taxes you pay as a US citizen. Here are the 5 types of taxes we have in the US. Number 1 is going to be federal income tax. This is big Uncle Sam coming down and ripping that money out of your pocket. Number 2 is going to be state income tax, and 9 states don't have this, but this is your state government collecting taxes from your income as well. Number 3 is a payroll tax, and that goes to Medicare and Social Security, which you're going to collect after you turn a certain age. Number 4 is a sales tax, and this is just a tax you're going to pay every time you purchase a new item. And number 5 is a property tax. This is a tax you pay based on the value of your home. Okay, now credit and taxes are both knocked out of the park, but there's one more thing we need to cover before we move on from the finance talk: investing. Now, before I get started, I need to preface this by saying I am not a financial advisor. I'm simply giving you very general information about investing. Please do your own research and get educated before making any decision. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's get into the very basics of what investing actually is. First, we need to do a little bit of vocabulary. Number 1 is going to be a share. Now, this is a percentage of ownership, a very small piece of a big company's pie. As a company does better, your slice of pie is going to appreciate. So it's not going to get bigger, but it's going to be worth more. But there is slices of pie you can buy that don't change at all. And these are called bonds, and most of the time they're specifically with the government. A bond is a loan that you give out to the government, let's say for $1,000, and they tell you they'll give you 5% of that money back, and the rate's set up front so you know exactly how much you're going to get back. But that's not very risky and can be a little bit boring, so let's talk about ETFs. An ETF is a small slice of a bunch of companies' pizza. So instead of just having a small slice of Apple, you have Apple, Tesla, General Motors, a utility company, another random company. You just have all of these different things which diversify you a lot. Now, diversification is super important because you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket. This will make sure your investments are safer, but how do you even go about buying stocks? Well, you use what's known as a brokerage. Now, a brokerage is like a middleman that buys the stocks for you, and they take a very small fee of what you're giving the company. It all happens instantly online now, so it's even more convenient. But why would you even want to invest? Well, investing is a great tool for building wealth and beating inflation. So inflation over the last 30 years has been around 3 to 4%, and the average stock return in the S&P 500, which is the biggest ETF, has been around 11%. So adjusted for inflation, if you invested your money continuously over the last 30 years, every year it would go up about 7 to 8%. And that may not seem like a lot, but the way it really helps you grow your wealth is through an effect known as compound growth. Now, the best way to demonstrate this superpower is through this chart. If you invested $10,000 every single year, it would take you 31 years to reach 1 million. But almost 8 years of that would be spent just on getting to the first 100,000. So once your investments can hit 100,000, you're already 25% of the way there. This shows you as you accumulate more money, you make it faster. That's why they say it takes money to make money. So now you should feel like a personal finance pro because you know exactly how to handle your money. But now let's learn how to make more money. Category 2 is all about business. Schools will teach you how to be an effective worker by hitting deadlines and sticking to a structured schedule, but I'm going to show you the truth because starting a business isn't as hard as you think. Step 1 is finding a problem in your community. It can be literally anything, but finding the solution to your problem doesn't have to be that innovative. You could just take something else someone has done and just do it more effectively. Look at the Scrub Daddy, for example. That is a super successful billion-dollar company, and all they are is a sponge. Step 2 is asking people suffering from your problem if they would ever choose your solution. And this might be a little bit harsh at first because they may tell you it absolutely sucks. And if they tell you that, you need to be receptive to that criticism and change what you're doing. Now, don't just go ask your mom and ask your best friend if they think it's a good idea because they're most likely going to tell you yes. You need to ask people who are completely unbiased if your solution is good. And after a bunch of people approve to your solution, you can move on to step 3, figuring out the feasibility of your solution. So you need to reassess and figure out if your solution is actually something you can do. And if it is, it's time to move on to step 4, creating a business name and logo. Now, this is the fun part because everyone loves making business names before they did the first 3 steps. It doesn't have to be super complicated, just a little bit creative and stick to your values. Now, step 5 is registering as an LLC. Now, an LLC just basically takes away the liability for you if someone uses your product and snaps their legs in half because they used it wrong. That's a super simple explanation, so make sure you dig a little bit further into exactly how to register as an LLC and what it protects you from. Step number 6 is a super fun one because you can hire someone else or do it yourself. You just need to find a way to create a website. There's countless free tutorials out there, but when I first did it, it was super simple. You can use something like Shopify if you're making a dropshipping store or a product store, or you can do something with WordPress and Elementor. Regardless, there's so many tutorials out there, just go watch one of them. I liked Be Jesus. Now, step number 7 has a part A and a part B, depending on what you're offering. If you're offering a product, step 7 is going to be creating the prototype and then checking it out and continuously improving it until you get something you're happy with. If you're selling a service, step 7 is going to be building up your skills and refining them through cheaper work for other people. And for both, step 8 is going to be finalizing your product or service, figuring out pricing for it, and then beginning to sell it to consumers and making more money. But you're still missing the mistakes you have to avoid in your 20s, so go watch my video on the 25 mistakes that could ruin your life.